remember that about a year or so ago, I made a series of videos on turntables. And I started off with what I considered to be the 20 iconic turntables of all time. I missed a couple like Dual and Microsiki, to name but two. Anyway, I did this video. It proved very popular. Still people watch it today. And then at the end of that, I chose the Rega P10 for our listening room, or my listening room here in Tienen in Belgium. And it's got and it had a very nice cartridge, the Effeta 3 cartridge, and great. And I had the Aria phono stage. But then later on, when Rega annoyingly released their NAIA turntable, I did a comparison with the P10 against the NAIA, both with the Aphelion 2 cartridge, which is their Rolls Royce of moving coil cartridges. And the outcome, the long shot of that was I ended up buying it. And so here it is in the listening room with the Aria phono stage. Now the problem is, and the reason why I'm shooting this video, is that a number of people commented that the Aria phono stage, the Mark III Aria phono stage, isn't really good enough for the outstanding NAIA and the Aphelion 2 cartridge, and that I ought to have a better phono stage. So I ignored it for a while because I was delighted with the sound and everything, and still am. But I got curious over the following months, and I reached out to Rega to see if they had the Aura, because they have a top of the range Aura too. And there wasn't one available. So I started reaching out to other phono stage manufacturers all over the world, writing to them saying, look, I want to make a video comparing a number of different phono stages. And some of the companies that I would love to have looked at, they just didn't respond. I didn't get an email back, didn't get anything. But over a few months, I did manage to gather 7 phono stages that I think really do represent the marketplace. And enough to make this video and everything worthwhile. So today I want to talk about my 7 phono cartridges and phono stages, sorry, and take you through that process of that I went on choosing the next one. And is the Rega Aria actually good enough, or is there something better? And what would I do now if I was buying now all over again? Now, in order to make this interesting, not only am I going to compare these phono stages, I'm actually going to record each one of them in the listening room. All of these recordings I'm making are going to be in a sister video to this video, which will be released today, the same day as this one. So you can click across, you can go into the description below, find a direct link to that video. But also you will be able to go to our website and download the 24-bit original recordings taken in this room of each of those phono stages with each of those tracks, and you will be able to compare track by track, phono stage by phono stage. And we're even going to include a set which will basically be for double blind testing. We've jumbled them all up, we've given them all numbers, and you can just decide by just downloading that one instead which one you like best, and then we can release the results of which was which on our Facebook page in a couple of weeks' time. Anyway, enough said. Let's get started. So here's the premise. I'm sitting in my listening room. I'm playing vinyl. I've got the Rega Aria 3 phono stage, and I want to see if there's something better. Now, I don't want to just rely with my own ears. I'm getting a bit older. Of course, the only thing that matters is what I like. But I decided it would be best for this exercise to reach out to 2 other people. So I reached out to a friend of mine, let's call him Martin. And Martin, he was actually, as luck would have it, looking for a new phono stage for his own hi-fi system. He's a musician. And I also reached out to a guy called Peter, and he was also looking for a phono stage. So both of them were super motivated to follow me through this journey, listening to all the different ones. So let's get started. If you, as always, want to just jump straight through to one, you can just click in the description and the contents below, and you can go straight to it, and indeed straight to the other video if you wish. Right, let's start with number one. The number one is the Rega Aria Mark III. Now, this is the Mark III. This is my own one, hence no gloves. It was first introduced in 2013. Okay, so quite a long time ago. They brought a Mark II out in 2018 and the Mark III out in 2020. Now, what can I tell you about this? Apart from the fact I like it, and apart from the fact that it matches the power supply, which is great, the one thing I really liked about this one is the elegance of it. Okay, you've got an on-off switch, but also you've got the moving magnet and the moving coil button here, which means because there are two separate inputs here for moving magnet and moving coil, you can, if you've got two turntables and two different types of cartridge, moving magnet, moving coil, just by pushing the button in front, switch from one to the other. I think that's really neat and extremely useful. And as you'll see, not many of them actually have that. So that was good. There's lots and lots of settings for the moving coil, capacitance and all the rest of it, and loading. And then also you've got the RCA outputs, just RCA out and RCA in, very straightforward, and with your mains and power. So that's basically, it's nicely made, it's very, very solid. And to be honest, at 1,420 euros, this is just the prices that I see today when I'm looking around where I am. I think it's pretty good because, and this is one of its advantages, is it's 69.3 dB of gain. The only thing I would say about it, it is a little bit sensitive as to where you put it. So if you put it next to a noisy power supply, you will hear that power supply. So it's a little bit sensitive, but that's okay. There's always a way of just putting it to the left of your turntable or to the right, out of the way, and it will work fine. It's got lovely feet. It's beautifully made. I think it sounded great, actually. I couldn't really hear anything wrong because I didn't know any different. What I do know is that when I'm recording in the studio classical music with my microphones, the output is very, very low. And what I want with a microphone preamplifier is silence. I want something absolutely silent. I don't want it to interfere with the characteristics of that microphone. If I'm going to do any warming or cooling down or sound shaping, that's all going to happen in post later on. I just want to faithfully reproduce what the microphone's doing. And I imagine that's what the manufacturers want. We want to get what the designers of that cartridge, the Aphelion 2, what they were doing. They've built this fantastic cartridge. What we want to do is amplify that as quietly as possible. Silently would be ideal, and retain its characteristics. So if I switch from that to a Stanton or something else, I will pick that up. So, okay, so that was number one. So what we did was, when I invited Peter and Martin over, they came over on separate occasions. So each session was like 3 or 4 hours long with a big break in the middle so they could really explore the different phono stages. I think what we decided to do, we say, right, this is 3 out of 5, and everything that comes after it will either be a 3, a 4, or a 5, or a 3, or a 2, or a 1, i.e. better or worse. So we set that as the sort of standard. That's the starting point. And so that's my Rega Aria. Now we're going on to number 2. And number 2, aha, is the Aura. Because finally Rega managed to have one available for me to try out. It's on loan, so therefore I am going to put my gloves on, because this is an extremely expensive phono stage. Maybe not for some, but it certainly is for me. It's about 5,700 euros. Yeah, 5,790 euros. It's a big, big beast, as you can see. Similar styling, lovely on-off switch here, just tucked in there, like some of their amplifiers. The Athos amplifier. If I lift this thing up, it weighs, I think it's about 16 kilos. But it's got very nice settings on the front, so I can adjust the all the adjustments. I can make them all on the front. I don't need to look on the back. It doesn't have moving magnet, and it only has one input. So you've got the input here, there's the output, either balanced or single-ended, and that's it. It's got a mono and stereo, and it has a mute button. Now, I like mute buttons, and I like the fact that Rega, I've put that against this glass background, because it means that, because that's a button you regularly press. So when I put a record on, I always mute, drop the needle down, and then release the mute button. It doesn't get dirty, and it's very easy to clean. So this is a phenomenally well-made piece of kit. Now, they used for this their three-stage all-symmetrical pre-amplifier. I know they spent years and years and years working on this to get it absolutely perfect, to get it silent, or as near as possible. It has 69.5 dB gain, which is what the Aria Mark III has up to. So you've got other settings, lower settings. So you've got 63.5 and 69.5, which is really ample, I think. So that was really good. So what did my two colleagues think of this? What did Martin and Peter think? Well, what I did was we let the piece of music play. We had the same piece all the way through. And after the music was played, they made notes. And after they made notes, I said, well, what do you think? And both of them agreed with me that this was by a step better sounding than the Aria. It's difficult for me to explain, because the Aria was good, but this, it's got a blacker background. It's just quieter. It doesn't seem to be so fussy about where you position it, although there's not a lot of room up here to position it. But I tried all sorts of fancy things. I even tried putting a turntable above it, putting it next to the turntable, moving our amplifier out the way, moving it at the bottom, moving around. It really didn't seem to be sensitive to where it was, which was a great thing. It makes it very flexible, so it means you could just tuck it away underneath on a shelf underneath. But sound-wise, I thought it was just what it should be. On some tracks, like the Clare Teal track that we'll share with you, there were, shall we say, the moments when she's singing that you could say, oh, that's beginning to be a little bit too bright. Or the maracas on Sympathy for the Devil, you think, is that too much? But with this, everything just sounded correct. It wasn't warm, it wasn't cold, it wasn't aggressive, the bass was excellent, and it was really superb. With the Bob Marley, it was absolutely amazing. The thunderous bass was there, the deep tones was there. There's a little hi-hat just on the right that comes louder and quieter. When it's quiet, it was still detailed. With the Aria Mark III, it was really clear. With this, it was there, but it just seemed correct. Everything about it seemed correct. But neither John, or Martin, what am I saying, John? Peter or Martin thought, well, they couldn't afford it. It was way beyond their price range. I think they were prepared to go up. Well, Peter was prepared to go up to about, I think, about €2,000, and Martin around the same, maybe a little bit less actually. If there was something cheaper, he would definitely go for something cheaper. So anyway, that was that. So they scored it a 5 out of 5. So they scored it a 5 out of 5 for sound. There was nothing better to them. So let's move to number 3. Now, number 3 is a very interesting phono stage indeed. And it's no surprise to my regular visitors, viewers, that it's a Sugden. Now, you might think I've got something special going on with Sugden. I can tell you that nothing's further from the truth. I like some of their amplifiers, specifically the A21 SE and the Sugden SPA-4. But I've also got a very friendly distributor nearby. So if I want to try something or try something out, they're straight round with a piece of kit for me to try and to borrow. Now this one is borrowed, and it is what they call the PA-4. Its retail price is €3,300. It was released in 2006, I believe. So this is typical Sugden. Another thing I like about it, when they've got something right, they stick with it. They're not every 5 minutes bringing out a Mark II, Mark III, Mark IV. I mean, nothing really wrong with doing that. It's just that if they think they've got it right, they don't spend more time developing. But anyway, this is it. What is nice about it is this 3 switch here. So you've got moving magnet and you've got 2 moving coils. And this is great because you've got a whole array of switches on the inside, on the back side. So you can put moving coil 1, moving coil 2, moving magnet 1. And the advantage of that is, and you might think, well, why is there more than, why is there more than that number here? That's because these little guys are actually loading resistors. And if you put this in, it gives me a 100 ohm load, which is what this cartridge likes. And this is Sugden way of solving the problem. Now, there are no settings whatsoever on the front or back for loading, which you would think, well, that's a bit damn weird, wouldn't you say? Why wouldn't you do that? I mean, it's crazy. Well, apparently it's because Sugden say, depending what type of cartridge you've got, they will make this for you with the correct match for your cartridge. So because you've got 3 here, 2 moving coil, 1 moving magnet, you could say, well, I've got an Aphelion 2 and I need that, that, and that, and that, and I've got an Autophon or whatever, and they will make sure that when they're set to the different ones, you've got the right setting, which actually is pretty cool if you think about it. But not so cool if you're constantly changing cartridges, because you wouldn't want to send this back to the UK or to the distributor in Belgium. But there's a nice little thing. There's an on-off button on the front, of course, and there's an on-off button on the back. I like on-off buttons. I don't like leaving things on all the time. The usual earthing tag. Now, I thought the gain with this was... it wasn't very high, to be honest with you. I'm thinking that the way this is set up, it was probably maximum 63 dB. What did Peter and Martin think? Well, Peter liked it. Martin thought it was okay. It was doing its job, but don't forget it had come after the Aura. The Aura is nearly twice as much. It's not exactly twice as much, a bit less than that. But they thought it was really good. They liked it. The thing about this one is, as you'll hear in the sound recordings, is that the sound stage, typical Sugden, it's all open and wide. So when we were listening to Bob Marley, Natural Mystic, sometimes the brass which come in after a minute or two, they're sort of floating, and Bob Marley's voice, there was a lot of depth. You could really lean into that recording, but it was all a bit vague, a little bit vague. So the bass wasn't as tight as it was with the Aura. Was just superb. It just sounded like those musicians are right in front of you. The Aria was very dynamic and it gave you very crisp, clean bass. This wasn't. It was all there. There was nothing wrong with it, but the soundstage, as I say, it was something like you were in a slightly bigger hall. Now, a bigger hall, excuse me. Some people will really like that. Others will say, I'm not sure. To be honest with you, neither Peter or Martin or I would choose this for its sound. I think after a while, I think I'd like a little bit more detail. But I really like the idea you could switch it, and perhaps if I was to buy it and I reached out to Sugden direct, maybe they could tune it to how I would want it to be. Anyway, there it is. It's from 2006. Let me see if there was anything else I need to say. It's a Class A current feedback circuit. And the moving magnet amplifier has a Class A voltage feedback circuit. Obviously, all of them are RIAA, plus or minus 0.2 dB, whatever. It's all very accurate. RIAA, by the way, is the curve that was invented, or that was agreed upon. I don't know exactly when. I'll look it up and put it in the notes. Back in the 50s, early 50s, I'd say. Anyway, what it is the if you pressed a record and you had it absolutely flat, so when the cutter was cutting, it was cutting from 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. Well, when you played it back on your record player, in some music, the needle would physically jump out of its groove. So they thought, okay, that's not going to work. So they came up with a system where they cut with a curve all the bass out right the way down by about 20 dB. I think it's 20 dB. I may be wrong, but I'll show you the graph anyway. And then they boost all the mid treble up. So it's a sort of tilt curve, and it's called the RIAA curve. And all the record manufacturers sort of agreed upon that around in the 50s. And so the reason for that is, so there's very little bass in the pressing, so your needle can read it. And then you compensate for that in the phono stage. So for me, it's a given that everybody who makes a phono stage needs to be able to make it properly and sensibly, and it should faithfully reproduce that curve so that we end up with a flat 20 hertz to 20 kilohertz. So there we go. That is number 3. Now on to number 4. Okay, so let's bring in number 4. Here we go. Try not to bash anything too much. There we are. Now, this is the Luxman E250, and again, this is on loan, and so I don't want to handle that, because it's going to be on somebody else's home soon, probably. Anyway, this was a very interesting phono stage. It retails at 2,500. So as you can see at the moment, we're dropping in price each time. Peter really loved the look of it. As soon as he saw it, he said, "Oh wow, this is my kind of device." So he was already queuing up to buy it before I'd even plugged it in. It's got a nice on-off switch. These lovely little toggle switches on the front. So you've got the mono stereo, which I like. The low cut on and off, which is also very useful if you've got a warped record or whatever, or the record and you can see that the cones are sort of moving like this because there's something strange happening in the cutting. You can just drop that on and then it cuts in, and then they will sit nice and still. And a good design, a good low cut design shouldn't affect this sound overall, because it should really be subsonic, so below our hearing level. So I know that my colleague AJ has got a tube, Luxman tube pre-amplifier, and he said the phono stage in that is amazing, and when he puts that low cut, it really cleans everything up without interfering, which is exactly what it should do. And so it's got two inputs, 1 and 2, and the moving coil, and then you've got here basically this moving magnet, and then you've got the low and the high for the moving coil. Now the thing here is, you've actually, here are your inputs, 1 and 2. I don't know what would happen if you hooked a moving magnet and then you had this, and you played it and you had the switch on moving coil. I don't know quite what would happen, but anyway, this is how it would work. There's your two inputs, there's your output. Again, you've got lots of different settings here, so you can really balance and load the cartridge really, really well. It's very reasonably made. It's not really like luxury casing. It's not on the same level as the Rega is, funnily enough, even the Aria, but it looks very, very nice, and it has this other function on it called the articulator. The articulator is, I don't know what it is, but I read the instruction manual, and it demagnetizes the cartridge and it demagnetizes the machine, and you leave it on for a minute or 2 minutes and then you play again. But you know what, I didn't hear any difference. So someone's going to kill me for saying that, but maybe I'm a Philistine, but I couldn't quite get what it was. Now, as I say, Peter really liked this, and the moment it was playing, he loved it. And at 2,500, he was going, oh yes, this could be the buy for me. The only problem we had was that the gain was about 57 decibels. So I did some checking to balance up, and I was reading 57 dB. And it needed more. Now, it does say in the manual that when you put it on low here, it should be 66 dB, but when we switched over, it didn't make any difference at all. Now, it may be that I did something wrong and we needed to try something else. I did try adjusting the switches on the back, but we could not get it to amplify 66 dB. So on certain recordings, Martin brought a record in of an acoustic piece in, and it just basically wouldn't go loud enough. Yeah, we were right at full volume, shall we say, just to make this thing run, which was a shame. And I'm sure that can be easily fixed. But the overall impression was Peter loved it, thought it was great value for money, would queue up to buy it. If you can hear it with a 66 dB gain, I think it's sold, right? Not this one, obviously, but a new one would be sold. So, are we ready for one more? Let's have a look and see what we can find. Oh, I didn't say what I thought about the Luxman, did I? The Luxman, I liked it. It was okay. It had a better soundstage than the Sugden, but it was, yeah, and it was very nice. But I didn't quite get it. It didn't connect to me. It connected with Peter. Martin felt more or less the same as me. Yeah, it's good. But should we say, it didn't make us go wow. And it may well be because I didn't like the look of it so much. I didn't really see how it fitted in, which is a stupid thing. But the more I think about it, sometimes I think we're so inspired by a look of something that we will forgive it or its heritage. I like the Luxman, but I want to hear the Luxman tube preamp that AJ's got in London. I want them to lend me one because I think it would be, well, I'd just love to try it out because he says it's great. Now, let's go and find another. Okay, so let's bring in Phono stage number 5. we're getting nearer to the end now. Okay, and here it is. It's the SPL Phonos. It costs €1,900. This one's a little bit beaten up. It was lent to me by the distributor. Now, SPL are known for their pro gear, the professional gear for recording studios. And as some of you all know, I've got an SPL headphone amplifier, pre-amplifier on my desktop system. Love it to bits. It was great. Now, this is made with the same kind of technology. And it's 120 volt rail. Now this is really, it blends in perfectly. So if you've got SPL gear already, that will just fit very nicely. It's not too big. What can I tell you about it? Well, I can tell you for a start that you've got all the controls for adjusting on the front, which is really handy, just like the Aura has. You've got the switch for the moving magnet to moving coil. You've got the high, medium and low gain here, so you can change everything that you need. And you've got the subsonic on and off. And there's the on-off button. Now, on the back, as you would expect with pro audio gear, there's a separate on-off switch and a voltage selector. Here's your input, here's your output. So very basic, but very, very sufficient and well made, nice feet. Everything's good about it. It's €1,900. What was special about it? Well, what was special about this one is the fact that it has high gain. And it says in the manual 70. We had it on -10 and there was just plenty of gain. So I had a feeling there was even more. It was extremely quiet. The Luxman was also quiet. The Sugden was fairly quiet. The Aura, well, that was silent, right? I mean, it was incredible. Now, I hooked everything up to the PassLabs. When we were doing our testing, I was using the PassLabs Int 25. Why? Because A, it's a good amplifier. It's a great amplifier. B, it's almost silent. When you turn it on and you turn the volume to full, you leave the cartridge off, on its rack on the side, and you know, if there's nothing connected here, it's totally silent. So what we're hearing when the cartridge is on the side is just the cabling, any inductance that you might be picking up, and the noise of the amplification from these devices. And this was very quiet, with an extremely high gain, as I say. So we didn't need the highest amount of gain at all. The 120 volt rail certainly worked for me. I don't really think, of course you could have the lower gain, which we use from 51 up. Both Martin and Peter, neither of them went, wow, that's incredible, that's the one. And I didn't either. But I could find nothing wrong with it. It's perfectly good. It's a good phono stage. And as I say, if you want that extra gain, if you're looking for one for a gain because you've got low output cartridges, it really should be top of your list for that. On the Bob Marley Natural Mystic, the bass was nice and tight. The sound stage was steady. There was no moving around or wandering effects. It sounded good, but you can decide for yourself, because when you go to the website and download all the files, you can compare them and also just click through to the playback video and there you can see them all yourself. So that's number 5. Now we've still got 2 more. We're getting down now to under €1,500. What is the next one? Okay, let's bring in something that I've seen and known about for a long time, never heard until recently. Now, I've had this one in the listening room for months. In fact, it was one of the first companies that I reached out to, and it's the Graham Slee Accession moving coil. They make a moving magnet version and a moving coil version. And as you can see, it's absolutely tiny. So we've got on the front a volume control. So you can have the inputs go for the input. It's only moving coil because this is the moving coil version. If you've got a moving magnet, you buy a second one, you put them next to each other, and then you can just obviously bring in the one you want. It's got output fixed and output variable. That's for your power supply. It's 24 volt DC. And here you've got your loading settings. Now they are there. You've got you know, enough to make the reasonable balance. But on the front, we have something with this one that we don't have with any of the others. And that is, we can select the curves. So if you're a collector of really old vinyl, you will know that there is something called the American curve, which was before the RIAA curve. And there was the British curve. I don't quite know what the British one was. But it means that you can, by pushing these down, so you can select the different curves. The question that goes through my mind is, if you're playing really old vinyl with the old settings, would you be doing that with a moving coil cartridge? I kind of imagine that you'd be using a moving magnet. Now, it's possible you might be using one of the early Autophons, and so then I understand, and I'm not an expert, so correct me if I'm wrong. Now, the other thing that we've got, the only thing we've got is a stereo and mono button, and then that's it. There's no subsonic filter or anything like that, sort of high pass filter. So that's it. It comes in one of these boxes. Now, this is a typical Graham Slee. They all look like this. They made headphones and were very, very popular, their headphone amplifier, and they were supplied lots and lots of the studios at the BBC with them, and even a great deal of phono stages, I believe. So they are very famous for their connections with the BBC, and that goes back decades, right back into the 80s, working with the BBC on various projects and making custom things for them. This is their power supply for this. It's the Pt.1 Enigma, the micro signal power supply. I mean, it looks really, really basic. This is an old demo model, so it's been around the block a bit. And this is the plug that goes in. It's a sort of 3-pin DIN plug. And that costs about £250, I believe. So the whole thing here is £1,435. So this is about the same price as the Rega Aria Mark III. To me, this doesn't look like that, but we have to know that these are made to order, they're handmade in the UK, and so everything is expensive on the assembly. So, but the important question is, how did it sound? Well, this is interesting because I had it for a long time and it's completely different from the Rega Aria. You can't imagine them more different. This is the kind of phono stage that would make every piece of music sound good. It's basically the Harbath P3 loudspeaker of phono stages. No matter what you play through it, it sounds good. For example, if you listen to the test tracks of the Rolling Stones' Sympathy for the Devil on this, it just all is very cohesive. And what is interesting too is that both Peter and Martin both said exactly the same thing. They're on different days, different occasions. They both said it's like everything's condensed. The soundstage got smaller, it's more compact, but there's loads of depth. It's very engaging, it's warm, and everything sounds great. But would they buy it and would I buy it? And sadly, the answer is no. I would buy it if I was looking for something extra. If I had two turntables and I was playing a lot of old vinyl, then this would be probably top of my list. Excuse me. If I was playing a lot of old vinyls, I'd say, yeah, that would be probably top of my list because it made it sound great. And I wonder what the moving magnet would be like. I can imagine it'd be excellent. So you could have the two side by side. Then you could have them to separate inputs on your pre-amplifier and just balance them up with this. It was really, really good, really nice. But it's not the one I'm going to buy. let me know what you think. I'm going to show you now the last one of this group. Let me go and get it for you. Right, let's bring in the last one. Now the last one comes from China, and the people sent it to me because they heard I was doing something on phono stages, and when they said they were going to send it to me, I thought, oh, this doesn't sound good. What if I don't like it? Let's have a look. And it's from Fosi Audio, and they very kindly donated 2 power amplifiers to our end of year quiz for a good deed, and they've now gone off to a very, very happy recipient. So I didn't want to say no. Anyway, so here it is. I'm going to unbox it because it doesn't take long. This is the thing. It doesn't have to go back, so therefore I can touch it with my hands. And I opened it like this, and I thought, you know what? That's quite dinky. It's not very heavy. It's nicely made, a nice aluminium box. It's got an input and an output. It's got a switch here, so you can go 38 dB, 48 dB, 56 dB, and 66 dB gain. Little switch, moving magnet, moving cartridge. I thought, well, can't be that bad. So I took out the power supply, and very, very unusually, the power supply is not DC, it's AC. So this is a transformer. It's constantly on when it's plugged in, of course. You hook it into the back here, 16 volts AC, and that's it. And you get a nice glow from the lamp. And as you'll see in a minute, we'll see what it sounds like. So I put that on at the end. Now, my first impressions were, oh, what is this? It was very quiet, really, really quiet. Noise-wise, probably among the quietest of all the phono stages we've talked about today, if not the quietest, apart from the Aura. Everything sounded lovely. There was no harshness from like we had on some of them. It was detailed, it was controlled, the mid-range was nice, Natural Mystic came to life, the bass was there, Bob Marley's voice was in a nice position, the brass came in, there was a little bit of the hi-hat, not quite as much as you got with the Aura, and certainly not as much as we got with the Aria, but generally it was really, really good. I was really, really impressed, to say the least. And so for me, it was a big surprise. Now, I have to say that Martin liked it as well. And he said, whoa, that's really, really good. Of all of them, that's good. But Peter, he wasn't convinced. He liked his Luxman. He saw this little thing. And when I told him that it was 109 euros, yeah, I think that had an impact as well. However, later on in the evening, I was switching some things around and I sort of sneakily plugged it all back in again and had it playing out on some records. We were doing some other testing. And after a while, he got to like it. He said, you know what, can I borrow it? I'd like to try it out at my home. So anyway, what I've done is I've bought another one, and I'm going to lend him this one to try out at home. So those are the 7, 109 euros for a phono stage, which is quiet and for me sounds good. So which one am I going to keep? Which one is going to stay in the listening room? Well, if I was starting out again today, even with the NAIA and the Aphelion 2, I would go for the Fosi, because I really, really liked it. I would replace the power supply transformer. And in fact, since then, I've made my own little power supply, just with a donut transformer. and some fusing and stuff, and screened. I would go with that. Now, it's got no features. It hasn't got a subsonic filter. It hasn't got a mono stereo, all the things that I like. And I would keep that, and I would run with that until I could afford the Aura. If I can't have the best, because I've heard the best now, and there may be better ones out there somewhere. I haven't heard the gold note, for example. I'd love to hear a gold note. You know, there's a number of them. Vatare, haven't heard that one. It's supposed to be brilliant. And I haven't heard AJ's Luxman, and I want that. AJ, get it over to me. So anyway, enough of this. If I can't have the Aura from Rega, I would have this and save my money until I can afford the Aura from Rega. And maybe in a few months' time or a year's time or something, I'll see one second hand somewhere. I haven't found one yet, which says something. And I would then go for that. But until that time, this one's sitting in my room because it sounded great and did the job. It amplified that cartridge really, really well. But you can judge for yourself. Am I being crazy? Maybe you won't agree. Very likely you won't indeed. And you can go to the next video, listen to all the sound clips, download them all onto your own computer, try them all out at home. They are recorded here in the listening room. So you're listening to playback, but I thought this is one way at least of getting an idea of comparison. So if you have been, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Enjoy the music.